Welcome to today's deep dive, where we'll be exploring a study on diagnosing neurolisteriosis in goats.
It's a really cool case study from the Journal of Veterinary Diagnostic Investigation.
Oh, wow.
It looks at the accuracy of 3 common diagnostic tests.
Okay.
The fluorescent antibody test, FAT, immunohistochemistry, IHC, and the polymerase chain reaction, PCR.
So we're talking microscopic level, looking for Listeria monocytogenes, right? The bacteria that causes all those food poisoning scares.
Yeah, exactly.
So it can jump from animals to people, making it zoonotic.
Exactly. So understanding it in goats is not only about animal health,
Right.
but also human health.
Interesting.
The study looks at how hard it is to actually diagnose this in goats.
Okay.
Because the symptoms, they can be all over the place, from like drooling and trouble swallowing to even paralysis in severe cases.
So it's more than just recognizing symptoms. We need to pinpoint the cause. And that's where these tests come in.
Exactly right.
Okay.
So the researchers, they looked at 25 goat cases from the Athens Veterinary Diagnostic Laboratory. All of these goats had the classic brain lesions that you see with neurolisteriosis.
Oh, wow.
And they compared all 3 tests, FAT, IHC, PCR, on these cases.
Okay.
They even used some control cases, too, to make sure everything was accurate.
Makes sense.
Then they looked at whether the infection was acute or chronic,
Gotcha.
and if lesions were on one or both sides of the brain.
Fascinating.
And the results, well, they were kind of surprising.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, FET, which is the quickest and cheapest test, only got 2 out of 25 cases, right?
You're kidding. So the most common test is missing over 90% of cases?
Yeah, it's a huge red flag for vets and goat owners, for sure.
Absolutely.
IHC, which is where you actually look at the bacteria under a microscope, did a much better job.
Okay.
It confirmed 19 out of 25 cases.
So IHC seems more reliable, but probably requires more specialized equipment.
That's right.
Okay.
And then there's PCR. It's really sensitive and specific.
Yeah.
It got 20 out of 25 cases, right?
So PCR is most accurate, but I'm guessing more expensive too.
Yeah, that's usually the case with these fancy techniques.
Makes sense.
But, and here's the real head scratcher.
Yeah.
2 cases couldn't be confirmed by any of the tests.
Really? Even with all those controls?
Yeah, even with the controls.
So are we dealing with a new type of Listeria? That's the burning question.
That's the real crux of it.
Wow. So much we still don't know about these bacterial infections.
Definitely. And in part 2, we'll dig deeper into those strange cases and what they could mean for how we understand neurolisteriosis. So those 2 cases where the tests were inconclusive.
Yeah, those were really interesting, weren't they?
The researchers, they thought maybe it could be a different kind of Listeria.
Makes sense.
Like maybe Listeria ivanovia or even the Listeria anacra.
So like we're looking for one thing, but it's a close relative causing the problem.
Yeah, that's one idea.
Interesting.
To be sure, it wasn't some other bacteria.
Yeah.
They actually did a test for a whole bunch of different bacteria DNA.
Oh, wow. So like casting a wide net.
Exactly. It came back negative.
Oh, wow. So those cases are still a mystery.
A mystery indeed.
It really shows how much we still don't know.
Yeah, science is always uncovering new things.
For sure. Speaking of uncovering, I'd love to hear more about those tests, especially the FAT and IHC.
Yeah, the study goes into a lot of detail about them.
Does it?
Even giving scores to the IHC results based on how much bacteria they saw.
Oh, so it's not just a yes or no, it's a matter of degrees.
Exactly. Some cases had tons of staining,
Right.
while others just had a tiny bit.
Interesting.
And you know what?
Wow.
The amount of staining actually told them if the infection was acute or chronic.
Oh, wow. So like how long the goat had been infected matters?
Exactly. Acute cases, those with recent infection, the IHC just lit up. The scores were way higher compared to the chronic ones.
Makes sense. The bacteria have more time to grow in those early stages.
That's it. But as the infection goes on and the goat's immune system fights back,
Right.
you see less and less staining.
So the figures in the study really help paint a picture.
They really do.
It's like we're looking through the microscope ourselves.
Exactly.
The FAT images are interesting too.
Yeah.
They really show why that method could miss cases where bacteria are hiding.
You got it. FAT only sees the bacteria that are floating around,
Right.
not the ones hiding inside the cells.
Fascinating. It really emphasizes the need to understand each test and what it can and can't do.
Definitely.
Sounds like expertise is key here.
For sure. A trained eye can pick up on things a machine might miss.
Makes sense, especially in something as complex as neurology.
You said it.
And we can't forget the stakes here. This is about the health of animals and potentially people too.
Absolutely. That's the real heart of the matter.
Accurate diagnosis is crucial for treatment and prevention.
It's like a puzzle. We need all the pieces to make sense of things.
Definitely.
And sometimes those pieces come from unexpected places.
Like comparing goat tests.
Exactly.
Well, it just shows we're always learning.
Oh,
But what does it all mean for the bigger picture? Diagnostics and disease surveillance.
that's a great question, and we'll explore those bigger implications in part 3.
Welcome back to our final part of this deep dive into neurolisteriosis diagnostics.
We've really been exploring how to ID this tricky infection in goats.
We've gone through all the tests, how accurate they are, and even those cases where we couldn't get a diagnosis.
It's been quite a journey.
It has. But now it's time to look at the bigger picture. What does this mean for veterinary diagnostics as a whole?
Yeah, what can we take away from this, all of this microscopic work, these surprising results?
Well, it seems like even with all the technology we have, there's still room for uncertainty. There's always a chance for error.
Right, we're not always dealing with black and white, especially when you consider that these pathogens are always changing, always finding ways to avoid detection.
It's like a constant race, trying to develop better tests, but the finish line keeps moving.
Exactly. And it's not all about technology either. The human element is still crucial.
Yeah, expertise, that trained eye, being able to connect the dots, that's essential.
This study really highlighted that.
It did. Showing how a trained eye can sometimes see what a machine can't.
It's not enough to just have the fancy test. You need someone who knows how to use it properly. Someone who understands the disease, the limits of the test, and the specific animal.
And speaking of specific animals, those 2 goats where none of the tests worked,
Yeah.
they really make you think.
They do. Could there be other pathogens we haven't discovered yet?
Maybe.
Or are there slight variations in Listeria that we're just not picking up?
Or something we haven't even thought of. That's the real mystery.
It's a crucial question.
It really highlights the importance of research, and keeping an eye on these diseases, tracking how they evolve so we can adapt our diagnostics.
It's like detective work, always looking for clues and trying to solve the puzzle.
And sometimes those clues lead to even more questions.
Exactly, but that's the beauty of science.
The constant search for knowledge, those moments of discovery.
Who knows? Maybe one of our listeners will be the one to solve those goat cases. Maybe they'll develop a new test, find a new pathogen, make a breakthrough.
So many possibilities.
So keep that curiosity alive, that passion. Never stop asking those questions.
That's what it's all about.
The world of vet neurology is full of challenges and amazing discoveries just waiting to be found.
Each step we take brings us closer to understanding these diseases and protecting animals and people too.
Exactly.
Well, that wraps up our deep dive into neurolisteriosis.
Thanks for joining us on this microscopic adventure.
From Vet NeuroJar, keep those minds inspired, hearts light, and tails wagging.